So you're a PT or PTA grad who's feeling the spark of something more. Maybe you dream of building your own business, one that's constructed around your vision, one that empowers you to make a real difference on your terms. This feeling, it's the entrepreneurial itch, and you're not alone. Countless PTs and PTAs are taking the leap to entrepreneurship, crafting careers that are as unique as they are. Welcome to the Innovate and Rehabilitate, the Entrepreneurial PT podcast. In each episode, we'll dive deep into the world of PTpreneurship with inspiring physical therapists and physical therapist assistants just like you who are crushing it on their terms. We'll uncover their secrets, their struggles, and the incredible impact they're making. From building your PT boss dreams to navigating the business side of things, we'll equip you with the knowledge and inspiration to turn your vision into reality. So, whether you're just curious about starting your own business or you're already out there making your dreams a reality, this podcast is for you. Get ready to unleash your inner entrepreneur. Let's do this.
Hello and welcome. I'm Derek Lee. I'm your host for the Entrepreneurial PT. Today, I'm excited to welcome Christina Rama to the show. Christina is a doctor of physical therapy and co-founder of Fownd. She's currently working to build Notation, an AI-powered documentation platform designed specifically for rehab clinicians. Christina graduated from Grand Valley State University and has worked across a wide range of settings, including outpatient, inpatient, neuro rehab, home health, and skilled nursing facilities. This breadth of experience gives her a deep understanding of the day-to-day realities clinicians face. Her path into entrepreneurship came directly from past experience, especially seeing the heavy documentation burden that's been placed on physical therapists. She believes technology should support clinical care and not get in the way of it. Through her work at Fownd, Christina is focused on creating practical tools that fit seamlessly into rehab workflows, helping to reduce friction for providers and ultimately giving clinicians more time back for what matters most, which is their patients and their lives outside of charting. Christina, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Of course. I'm excited as well, as I'm sure our listeners are. In reading your bio, and hearing just a little bit about your journey from clinician to founder of your company, I think it's pretty amazing. One, just to how much experience you have across a variety of settings. Like not a lot of PTs get that. But I am curious, like what first drew you to physical therapy in the first place?
Yeah. So what drew me to physical therapy was really the ability to work closely with people. And I really liked the idea of being able to actually see their progress, because you're not just seeing someone once and for a short time, you're just part of their recovery and you get to watch them regain function and get back to their life. And I also liked that it really wasn't just about treating an injury. You're also getting the chance to constantly problem solve. You get to educate, you get to adjust. And I think that made the work feel really meaningful to me. So that's kind of what started me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've seen that you've been in several different settings. You want me to speak to that a little bit? Like, what's your perspective on all the settings and how'd you feel about it? Also, like, was there a particular reason you changed settings? Like,
yeah, so that's a good question. And initially, right out of PT school, I decided that I wanted to kind of explore and see what felt like the best fit for me, but also get to see the country. Like I felt like I had kind of been stuck in this bubble for a long time, and I'm like, let's see everything. And so being a traveling PT allowed me to do that. And also it has given me a lot of experience in all the different types of settings, which I think is important because you get to see what each area's problems are. You get to understand the workflows. It just was helped keep it kind of interesting and give me a lot of different skills and then find where I felt the most comfortable.
Definitely. I mean, that's pretty amazing. I mean, and it sounds like, and I want you to talk about it a little bit more in a second, but it sounds like that experience directly relates to your work at Fownd, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. Like just understanding the ins and outs of so many different, aspects of PT and maybe the pain points that PTs run into and just living it yourself. When did you first start thinking beyond, like maybe you wanted to shift into something beyond clinical care?
So that kind of developed gradually. It wasn't something that just happened overnight. I didn't go into physical therapy thinking I would start a company.
Right.
I genuinely enjoyed patient care, and I learned a lot, of course, working across different settings. But over time, I just started to notice how much of the job seemed to be shaped by systems and things that didn't really match how clinicians think or work. I would finish a full day of treating and then spend my evenings catching up on documentation. And after I realized it wasn't just a me problem, it was something, a lot of therapists were dealing with. And I think that's what really started shifting my thinking towards doing something beyond traditional patient care and wanting to find a way to improve that experience for other clinicians as well.
Definitely. I mean, just out of curiosity too, and this isn't like, oh, what did this place do or versus this place? But did you find that some places were maybe better at that than others, or what was that experience like? Like, were there some that had a really good system in place to prevent burnout from this particular, facet of PT, or some others worse? What was that like?
I think honestly, the documentation challenge was fairly even across. I think there were maybe some clinics that allowed you actual dedicated documentation time, and that definitely helped. But then, I had some that you just did it at home because it was so busy. And that's part of the reason why they had a PT coming in, is they were just so busy. So
Makes sense.
Yeah, there were some that would give you that dedicated time, which was great. And then there's some that is like, well, we just really need you to see these patients because they need you so bad. So
For sure. There's definitely a big squeeze for that to happen, right? It's like,
yes,
I feel like from my experience, a lot of places don't really give you much time, and if they do, it's maybe a little. And it's definitely a squeeze to just try to see your patients, and the documentation comes later. So do you feel like there was a moment for you, and maybe it was just gradual too, but was there a moment in your career where you're like, you know what, I'm gonna do something else, like this, I want to try to fix this?
Yeah, like you said, it wasn't one big moment. It was more just the same frustration happening over and over again. And, clinicians are expected to deliver this really thoughtful care. But again, the systems around us don't make it easy to actually provide that care and document it at the same time. So it started to feel like you had to choose between being present with the patient and keeping up with documentation. So at some point, I just decided to stop accepting it as part of the job. And I really started questioning why it had to be that way. And that's really what pushed me to think about how could it be done differently.
I love that. What did that process look like for you? Like transitioning from the clinic to starting your own company? Like, what was that journey like? Was it like quick? Were you like, okay, next month I'm starting my company? What was it like?
It was actually pretty quick. Because my husband works in AI and tech, and he kind of saw the challenges, and with us talking to each other, we're like, you know what, I really think that we could come up with something that could change this problem and make a big impact. So, as soon as we decided that, we just, went for it. Not that that's been quick since that point, but the shift was quick.
Totally. Time is now, right? Like you kind of just jumped on it.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, I mean, we're talking about it. Can you just describe for our listeners and for me, just what exactly is Fownd, your company?
Yeah, you did a great job in the intro explaining it.
Cool.
So I won't go too in depth, but Fownd is a clinician-led company. So it's important for us to have PTs and OTs or any other clinicians that we're building documentation for to be a part of the company. And our focus is on improving the systems that therapists use every day. And of course, we're starting with documentation. And our first product is called Notation, and it's a real-time documentation assistant designed for rehab clinicians. And instead of documenting after the visit, it will capture your clinical reasoning, the observations, inputs during the sessions, and you can actually see the note build in real time and make edits. So that way, by the time the session is done, the note's done, and then you can actually stay focused on your patient more too. Totally.
First off, sounds amazing. I mean, as a clinician myself, I mean, that's the dream.
Exactly.
I'm curious too, you're from a healthcare background. I know a lot of people are technologically savvy just in general, but I think about this from my own perspective. I'm not technologically savvy at all. And coming from a
Mm-hmm.
healthcare background, I feel like I would just I'm trying to wrap my mind around like, how was that transition for you to like get into this like technical, you know, what I would call, I guess, like technology based background?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. And I don't know that, I was ready for it, but I think I was just really passionate about the problem. And I felt like I had a good, help around me. And so I just decided to kind of go for it and just learn on the go. I think really you just have to kind of be open to doing things that make you feel uncomfortable and learning new things, and then, pivoting when you need to pivot. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you mentioned like being okay with being uncomfortable, because I feel like, yeah, I feel like that's a theme across entrepreneurs in general, is like, it really just growing as a clinician in your career. It's like, you got to be okay with that. I don't know what I'm doing necessarily, but I'm going to try to figure it out. And every step of the way is a learning moment. And do you feel like there were any maybe like skills or things you did to like set you up for success in this new chapter, in this new role?
Some skills, I mean, I think that there are some skills that, transfer from being a clinician, which is, you are always open to looking at things a new way. You're open to learning. You're actually expected to continue learning. You have to be really good at communicating and educating and working with other people. And I think those type of skills really carry over well into being an entrepreneur, because you have to be able to do all of those things to be an entrepreneur, because it's usually not just you, right? You have a team of people, and you have to be able to kind of explain your vision and, communicate well.
Definitely. That makes perfect sense. What do you feel like gave you the confidence to step kind of like clinician, founder, entrepreneur, running your company? Like, what do you think that gave you the confidence for that?
Well, honestly, I don't know. I would describe it as confidence at first. I think it was more
make it a little.
Exactly. I think it was more the problem just felt real enough and important enough that I just couldn't ignore it anymore. And I think, again, once I started to talk to other therapists, it became obvious that the documentation wasn't something that I was just struggling with. It was kind of across the board. And like I said, again, my husband kind of works in the space, so that helped me, again, build confidence. And, I wouldn't say I'm 100% confident yet, but definitely more confident. And that's come later through building and learning and getting feedback from, users, my team, anybody that I can get feedback from. So in the beginning, it was just more about conviction, I think, than certainty.
I love that. Hey, it's brought you to where you are. So, I mean, that's kudos to you. That's amazing. So what does a typical day in the life look like for you as the co-founder, president of Fownd?
Yeah, there really isn't a typical day, which I think is part of what makes it interesting. Some days are very product focused. I'm working closely with our PT/OT team, engineers, our researchers, to make sure that what we're building actually reflects real clinical workflows. And then other days, are more outward facing, like demos, partnerships, or conversations with clinicians, clinic owners. So as a early stage founder, I end up doing a bit of everything. So it just depends on what's needed that day. I'm usually just bouncing around between product and business side of things. So, but it keeps it interesting, and I love it.
Definitely. I mean, it kind of sounds like, again, speaking from a PT perspective myself, like you kind of sounds like you approach your day pretty like flexible. Like you're approaching it very like, well, I'm going to like do these things and set out to do these things. And maybe this pops up and I have to jump into doing that. Right. And I feel like that's a skill that we pick up being PTs, it's like, it's like, you never know what a patient's going to do either when they walk in. So, I mean,
you don't know who's going to show up or who they might put on your schedule at last minute. You just got to be ready for it. Go with the flow.
You got to jump right, exactly. You got to jump right in. That's amazing. What do you feel like? I mean, so the first tool, and you could also maybe and maybe there's another like aspect of Fownd that I'm not familiar with, and by all means dive right in. But it sounds like the first tool is notation, which is this AI documentation kind of platform. What do you feel like the biggest challenge was building that product?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is healthcare is just nuanced, and rehab even more nuanced. It's not enough just to build something that captures what you're saying or the words. I think in physical therapy, so much of what we're doing is based on movement and observation and not just conversation. So it was really important that we build something that supports that clinical reasoning and fit into the real workflows, and produce something that, clinicians actually felt comfortable standing behind at the end of the day. And I think that's a much higher bar than just, simple transcription. And then also healthcare just moves carefully and, for good reason. But it definitely takes patience to build in this space. You're always balancing innovation and trust, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's eloquently put. What does that process look like? You talk about like making sure it makes sense for providers. Like, you're a provider, you have providers on your team, it sounds like. Yes. But I mean, what does that really look like in making sure it makes sense for them?
So, we obviously do a lot of testing before we put it out into the world. The other thing is, because we have OTs, PTs on our team, the person who actually has created the look and feel of it is also a clinician. So we spend a lot of time in meetings about what that flow would look like. How would these things make sense to them? How do we make it as frictionless as possible? And then after we're done with our testing, we have people who do it live in a clinic, and then we kind of give it out to the general public after that. So, we make sure that everything makes sense from a clinician standpoint. And that's our bar. We kind of, and our engineers are awesome. They kind of are understanding the PT workflow more and more as they've learned from us. And so I think we have a really good flow and, just communication between the teams. And I think that makes a difference in our end product.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, hearing you talk about it, it's like you're mentioning like communication a lot, like between all the people that work with you and work at Fownd. It also sounds like you're with your consumer and your customer too, like just that feedback maybe you're getting from them and all of that. Working as a healthcare provider in this space, like you mentioned, you're working with engineers, which is a whole different side of working, I guess, a different career. What's that like working with, you're used to working in a hospital. It's like all people in healthcare. It's like now you're working in different space.
Yeah, I think it took me a while to understand, every profession has its own, if you will, language. So I think I had to learn that language and how to get my thoughts across in a way that made sense to them. So I think I'm now at a point where we have that vibe, but before it took some time. Like, I'd explain something, they'd look at me like, what's going on? And we'd, keep going back and forth until it made sense. But I think now I think it's different. It's just a matter of kind of learning how people understand different problems, I think, is what I've kind of run into. Yeah.
I mean, that makes perfect sense. When you're going through, I mean, hiring and selecting and picking out people that are in a different space than you, like how do you do that as someone from a PT background? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so luckily it's not just me. Yeah. I have a co-founder with me, and they help me with the technical side. So they are there to help ask any questions that will be pertinent to making sure that they know what they're doing on that side. And then, what I do is we kind of make sure it feels like a company cultural fit. Yeah. We want to make sure that, everybody will mesh well together and work well together, because we really want our team to feel close and also just feel like they can call each other out. Like, it's not one person that's dictating everything. We want it to be a group effort. So we want to make sure that anybody that we hire in our group feels that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's great. I mean, again, like eloquently put, like I feel like, talking to other entrepreneurs, a very common piece of like making a successful company is like that communication, the interdepartmental collaboration. You're working with different backgrounds and people with different careers. Like that's got to be critical to the the function of your company,
Mhm.
Do you feel like, was there anything that surprised you, or maybe what surprised you, if anything, from your transition from clinician to founder company?
Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say anything completely surprised me, but I don't think I was fully prepared for how just broad the role is and how much of it involves learning across areas that, were completely outside my original training. We're used to being, as clinicians, becoming skilled in a very specific area. And as an entrepreneur or founder, you're suddenly learning across product, technology, partnerships, and business, sales,
Yeah.
pretty much everything all at the same time. And a lot of it, like I said before, is just kind of figuring things out as you go. At the same time, as I mentioned before, I was surprised at how transferable some clinical skills are. I think clinical work really teaches you how to think through complex problems, adapt quickly, communicate clearly, and also just make decisions without necessarily having all the information. And, that just translated more than I think I expected.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You're talking about the skills that, like you just mentioned, like going off of the skills as a clinician, as a PT, that translated straight into your role now.
Mm-hmm.
We already brought up communication. You brought the flexibility. You don't know what's going to happen. You're just rolling with the flow. But is there anything else, like in the clinical side, you feel like maybe you learned as a PT along the way that you were like, as you're working also with like other people, like I said, the engineers and stuff, it's like you maybe get this part easier, or maybe it comes to you naturally because of your background?
Yeah, I think it helps. I can have the mindset of a clinician. Like I kind of get a sense of what they'll trust, what will feel usable for them, what they're going to just discard right away and be like, no, I'm not doing that. It's too much work. So, I think knowing that and being in the mindset of a clinician has helped a lot, especially in this particular role. Yeah. But I mean, I just think as clinicians, we just maybe don't always give ourselves as much credit as we should, because we really have a lot more skills and transferable skills than maybe we realize.
Definitely. I mean, I love that you said that, because I feel like that is so true. I have a feeling of where that comes from, just as like someone who does it myself. Where do you think that comes from? Like as PTs, why is it that we like, and also just in healthcare, I'm sure it applies across types of roles in healthcare too. But, why do you think that is? Why do you think there's something that innately comes out of and transfers directly?
You mean just that we're not necessarily as confident in our skills as like being able to transfer, or what do you mean?
More so like, why do you feel like as a clinician, like being a clinician almost made it easier for you to step into this role, or like there's certain parts of the role you're like, I get because I was a clinician?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that part of it was too that, I just was able to adapt to a lot of different settings before. Like I had been in pretty much every setting you can think of. And I think a lot of PTs do test out different settings. And even in school, we're testing out different settings. And that means that we are having to adjust our thinking, having to adjust who we're talking to, how we're talking to. We're convincing a different patient population that this is what they need to do to get better. And I think, just all of that mixed up in one just makes us really flexible. And I think in order to be successful in business world or anything really, flexibility, but also, confidence in what you're doing is key.
Definitely. Yeah, I think I agree. I mentioned like, I feel like that flexibility, that like navigating different patients, different, support roles around you in the healthcare setting, just definitely lends a lot to your ability to lead a team, right? And like you're essentially leading a team of patients in a way, right? Like you're like, you might have 15 patients on your caseload, like you're leading them to get better. You're having to navigate different personalities, interact with different people, people that are hard to interact with sometimes. And you just kind of have to. It is what it is, right? Like, you're my patient, I gotta help you somehow.
Gotta stay professional, right?
Exactly. So it's I think it's always so interesting to hear like a clinician like yourself like step into such a different role and be like, I mean, I figured it out, and that's pretty amazing. Do you feel like looking back, is there, what's maybe one piece of advice that you wish you had when you were first starting out as a new PT?
I think I'd tell myself that it's okay if your career path doesn't look exactly the way that you expected when you started, because honestly, this is not where I expected to be, but I think early on, it's easy to think there's one right path, but your clinical training, like we just said, can actually take you in a lot of different directions, more than you realize. And a lot of that direction comes from being open to opportunities you didn't originally expect. So I think, just keep being open and open to learning and trying new things.
Love that. Love that. In a similar vein of advice, building the company from the ground up like you have is not a small feat. It's a big accomplishment. Do you have any advice to other entrepreneurs maybe who are listening, who may be starting or thinking about starting their own business?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing maybe is just starting with a real problem that you understand deeply, or barring that, you have some level of passion for. I don't think you need to have the whole path mapped out before you begin. A lot of being an entrepreneur is really being willing to start, stay curious, and just figure things out as you go. And I think it's important also just to be realistic, because building something takes a lot of patience, resilience, and a willingness to keep learning. But if you actually care about what you're working on, it makes it a lot easier to keep going when things get hard.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it echoes in line too with like your direct experience. Like you said, it was like kind of like, all right, next month I'm starting my company. Like you just jumped right in because you had a passion for it. You felt good about it. You felt strongly about it. That feels like that's what has carried you forward, right, to where you are now. Just thinking ahead too on your company Fownd. We talked about notation. What are you guys working on without spilling secret sauce? Like what's the next step for Fownd, you think? Where do you see it going?
Yeah, I think we are working on moving into other settings. So home health is coming very soon, which is a very documentation heavy space. We're also working on expanding into other rehabilitation areas, especially OT. And then also a big thing on our horizon is computer vision, but using it with just like a simple laptop camera. But it will help work with like range of motion measurements, but also functional movement or gait analysis. So having something that you can just fire up on your computer without having a bunch of fancy gadgets, I think. So that's kind of what's on the horizon for us.
Wow. Computer vision. I mean, what exactly is that? Like, I actually don't really know what that is, I think.
So basically what the camera will do is we have to kind of select who is being looked at so that it knows, but then it'll map out the body points on the person and take a 2D image and make it into a 3D image. And then it will be able to assess movement patterns, range of motion, things like that. So that's how it will be able to do like analysis of functional movement. But I think it's another layer that will be important, especially as outcome measures become more and more important in the physical therapy world, to have something that's this concrete to be able to show, well, look, this is where they started, this is where they ended, and I have the proof right here. So I think that's kind of why we've decided to start moving in that direction as well.
Wow. I love that. Like to me, that sounds a lot like, I mean, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding it too, but that's like would this be used for telehealth, but also in person? Like this is like, it's like kind of both things, like making it easier for a therapist to see these things even with their patient right in front of them? Correct.
Yes, it's for both. Yeah. So you could do it with remote therapeutic monitoring. Yes. Yeah. But you could also do it in person. So, if you're doing a functional movement assessment, you can have all of that information right there. And then you can compare that to the next time you want to do that same assessment, whether that be at a reassessment or discharge or whenever you decide to do it in between. But so it's definitely meant for any use case that seems worthwhile for a PT.
Yeah. Wow. That's pretty amazing. Just like where technologies come and where it's going, and your company Fownd is a big part of that. It sounds like, so you guys are really pushing it forward. What is, and just to talk about Fownd for a second longer too, about how you guys are kind of shaping the future of PT. It sounds like, what, as the founder, how do you feel like you're staying ahead of that? Like, are you going to conferences? Are you going to, are you collaborating? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so we do go to conferences, but we also just really listen to people using our product. Like, hey, it'd be really cool if you could do this. We're like, okay. And then we come back and huddle together and we see if that is possible, what the timeline on that might look like, and then, try to make it happen. So I think it's kind of a mixture of just listening to our audience and our users, and also just making sure that we're staying in the loop of what's coming and what's on the horizon.
Love that. Well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing so much as you did today, Christina. It was really amazing to hear your story, number one. So thank you for that. Also, just in general, like, your company Fownd sounds like so important for the future of PT, and you're doing really amazing work with it. So, but also, like, hearing you as a PT talk is really inspiring, I think, to other clinicians out there. It's like, you're somebody who's a fully PT background, treated in so many different settings, and are out there crushing it as an entrepreneur. So really,
thank you.
really amazing. And like I said, thank you so much for sharing your journey and insights with us today. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us for this conversation with Christina. Please join us next month when we're back for another episode of the Entrepreneurial PT. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Derek.
Of course.
And there you have it, another dose of PT-preneurial inspiration to fuel your journey. Check out more inspiring stories from PTs and PTAs out there making waves by listening and subscribing to our podcasts on your favorite streaming platforms. And don't forget to rate and review this podcast. Thanks for listening.